Hi, I wanted to show a game in the London system where black should not exchange its bad bishop, so-called bad bishop. Oftentimes, what happens is we have this thinking that the c8 bishop in the London system, the e6 variation, is often not that effective, and we should exchange it. But and I have always had this problem with this variation, the d5 e6 variation, how to deal with this c8 bishop and what to do with it, and I have struggled. But recently I have seen some games, and after seeing those games from grandmasters, I understood what is the role of this bishop and where to put it and how to utilize it. So I wanted to show you guys this game. So the game starts with d4, knight f6, bishop f4, d5, e3, e6. So this setup is, some of my friends have told me that this is not the ideal setup for black. You should play c5, develop the bishop on f5, knight c6, queen b6, like that. But this is what I have prepared. This is what I feel is more solid. The other lines I have sometimes struggled with, so I kept this line. But my only problem here is this bishop. What to do with this bishop? White's bishop is out of the pawn chain, but my bishop is inside the pawn chain. Similar problem we have in the French defense. But after seeing and studying some games, I understood how to utilize this bishop, and I wanted to explain that concept. If you also struggle with these things, this game will help you understand that better. So bishop d3. These are not normal moves. I'm not explaining in detail. Bishop g3, castle, c3, c5. It's important to play c5 before you play knight c6. But in this particular structure, the knight goes to d7, because the plan is the knight goes to d7, the pawn goes to c5, this pawn goes to b6, and then this bishop comes to b7, controlling the e4 square. So we have 1, 2, and 3 pieces controlling the e4 square, and he will have his knight, his bishop, and his queen, 3 pieces controlling the e4 square, and he will castle and bring his rook. And before he brings his rook, we will execute some exchanges in the center, and we will do something. That's the whole plan. So c5, knight d2. Now very careful, don't play knight d7 first, then your bishop is hanging on d6. So first queen c7, protect our bishop, and you should not exchange. Don't exchange, because it may, in some lines, it will give an open file to this rook, and white may even castle queen side. So just hold, just don't exchange right now. Knight f3, knight d7, not knight c6, not knight c6, because if knight c6, he may capture this pawn, and then your bishop is pinned, your bishop cannot capture, and then you will have to capture and give him an open file. So not knight c6, instead knight d7. If he captures the pawn, I will capture with my knight and gain a tempo on the bishop, and then I'm going to put one of my knights on the e4 square. That's the plan. He will never capture. Most of the times he will not capture. If he captures, it's good for us. We will take knight c5, his bishop moves, or he can exchange first. And if his bishop moves fine, we have an excellent knight on e4. And if he exchanges, we are okay. Queen is well placed on d6. So bishop b1 he played. This is slightly dubious. Bishop c2 is expected. But bishop b1, this rook is blocked, and he will have to spend another move a6 to bring this bishop back into the game. So this bishop b1 is not right, doesn't look right, although the position is still equal. Black is slightly better. B6. Now the point of b6 is to bring the bishop on b7. It may look tempting to bring the bishop on a6, but after b6 castles, bishop a6, rook e1, white is fine. You don't have anything on this diagonal. So do not be tempted to play bishop a6 here. I mean, it's white to play castles. You may be tempted to play bishop a6, but that doesn't do anything. It actually helps white. It actually gives white more time to bring his pieces and execute e4. He wants to execute e4, and our bishop's job is to prevent e4. So bishop b7. That's the right plan. Queen c2. Don't think it's a good move, because my knight is coming on e4 now, and I don't think he can do anything. And even if he takes, you may think, oh, now my bishop is blocked by the pawn. That's not the case. So this is how I used to think, that, oh, now my b7 bishop has very less scope. That's not true. This pawn is actually a very, very big strength. It cramps the white position, and this bishop is doing a good job defending this pawn. So This is fine. There is nothing to be worried. Only after I saw some grandmaster games I understood how this is actually a strength, not a weakness. So he moves the knight. Now we exchange this bishop. If he takes, if he takes with the f pawn, there is nothing to be worried about the open file. There is a weakness on e3, and we will put a knight, and then we will put a knight on d5 or g4, and we will target this weakness later. So generally they will take with the h pawn. If they take with the f pawn and double rooks, there is nothing to be worried about. You always have a knight on f6, and if he gives an exchange sacrifice, that's fine. You take it. There is, you don't, he doesn't have any pieces to attack you on the queen side yet, just yet, on the king side. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of making this exchange. So earlier I was always afraid of making this exchange, thinking he will open the f file. Let him open. It's okay. There is nothing to be. You can always play f5 and shut down the f file. So yeah, so this is fine. Now f5. Now black's opening is been a grand success. His bishop looks misplaced on b1. The knight doesn't have much scope on the king side. It has to come to b3 or c4. And after c4, I'm not sure where is it going. If he goes to e5, I'll simply take it and break and win a pawn. And his queen on c2 doesn't know. I don't know what he's doing. He can never play f3 because g3 will hang and e3 will become weak. So what are these three pieces doing here now? My knight is much superior than his knight. It's coming to f6 and g4, and g4 it will be a very strong piece threatening h2. The queen can come to f7 and h5, and there could be mating nets here. My bishop is very strong on b7, although it is blocked by its own pawns. It is preventing pawn breaks. That is the job of this bishop. His bishop is not doing anything. His rook is out of the game. My rook is soon coming to the game with e8. So overall black's pieces are better, but computer says it's an equalish position with black being slightly better. So a3. Now he wants to play bishop a7, a2, bishop a2. Fine. So we bring the knight. Because from d7 the knight has no useful jumps. I will never play d takes c5. That's only helping white. He will get the e3 square for his knight somehow. He will go to c4, and then if I take, he will take, and then knight c4 e3, and then this knight will become a problem. So I'm not going to take on the center yet. So knight f6. So we improve our knight, bishop a2. We develop our last piece. Now all my pieces are developed, and I have a clear plan of going knight g4, queen f7, queen h5. And I'm not sure how is he going to stop it. He needs a knight on f3. He doesn't have that knight, and he doesn't have f3. So, I mean, f3 looks really bad because queen g3 and knight g4, and it's difficult. So knight c4, knight g4, queen e2, king h8. Now here bishop a6 looks tempting, but my bishop, again the same concept. I have a bad bishop, let me exchange it. This is how I used to think. But after studying deeply some grandmaster games and master games, I understood this bishop has a very important job, not to allow f3. That's one. And this bishop is actually more powerful than this knight or this bishop in this specific position. So bishop a6 looks tempting, but nothing comes out of it. He will play rook fd1, and if you take, he will take. He's protecting the knight twice, and then he will bring his other rook. It's actually helping white. You're not, by pinning the knight, you're not achieving anything. And he will welcome this exchange so that he can break. So bishop a6 doesn't look good. So I just thought, okay, I'll just get out of this diagonal. Just get out of this diagonal as a safety measure. Rook c1 looks a very dubious move. I don't know. I am not going to play d takes c5. So what is this rook doing on c1? And why this rook? This rook should ideally come to c1, and this rook should come on d1. So I did not understand this rook fc1 move. Looks like a very bad move. And again, mistakes happens in pairs. I was calculating queen f7, queen h5, and queen here. But then after some calculation, I found that queen f7, knight e5. He wants to exchange the knight now. And my queen, when the queen is on c7, I am winning a pawn. But when the queen is on f7, when the queen is on f7, then I am no longer winning a pawn after knight e5. Not just yet. Maybe I can win it later, but not just yet. So after queen f7, knight e5, queen h5, knight takes, pawn takes. The plan is rook f6, rook h6, and then entering. But then I saw queen d2, and then after this king f1. And now the question is, what does queen a1 achieve? Yes, you win the g2 pawn, but then your queen. I'm not very sure what it is doing on g2. So queen 8 a1, king f2, queen a1, king e2, queen g2, king d1, and then king c2, and then yeah, there is bishop a6 also, but he can block with c4, and then he can take the h file. So I could not calculate it completely to the end. What happens after queen a1 and other things I could not. And then he can also come with queen d7. When my queen and rook goes here, he will come with queen d7 and attack the bishop and rook, and it could become a problem. And I bishop a6 is nothing because of c4, and he can escape via c2 and just sit on b1. So I did not see a clear continuation. Although computer says this is the stronger continuation, I could not see it. I played rook f6, which is a dubious move. This rook is actually not doing anything. But it creates a psychological effect that his forces are coming, so let me exchange the knight, and he gives me the pawn. Rook d1, he corrects his mistake. Rook was misplaced on c1, so he corrects his mistake. Rook h6, another dubious move. It looks good, it looks threatening, but it doesn't do anything. But it allows me to win the e5 pawn, because now he panics and wants to exchange the knight. So knight e5, knight takes e5, d takes e5, queen takes e5, rook d7. So the computer says it's equal. White is slightly better. Computer even says white is better, but in an actual game, it's very difficult to evaluate such equalist positions. I feel it's easier to play with black, with an extra pawn and with an open h file, and I feel it's easier to play with black. But again, my evaluation could not may be wrong. So queen b8, good move, protects the bishop and also protects the a7 pawn. And my e6 pawn is sufficiently defended. My only problem of black is the back rank. Back rank is weak. So he plays rook d1, natural move. Bishop c6, good move. Rook d6. If rook f7, then rook f6. So he's threatening rook f5, because bishop c, rook f7, rook f6 is, I feel this is fine. And you cannot play king g8, because if you play king g8, then rook f5. So that's the trap. That's the trap I saw. If after rook f7 you attack the rook with the king, he will play rook f5. So I saw, okay, if he plays rook f7, I will play rook f6. My rook on h6 is misplaced, and his rook is very good on d7. I will exchange the rook. And f6 pawn, this is not a weakness, because his queen has no entry in the dark squares. So this is fine. So rook d1, bishop c6. Now again, it appears that this bishop is a bad bishop, but this bishop is actually doing a very important job. It is preventing queen e1 and then f3. It is preventing that pawn break. This bishop looks to be stronger, but it is currently restricted. I have enough defense on the e6 square. So rook d6, queen c8, good move. It adds more protection to the e6 square and defends the bishop, adds more protection to the d7 square. Now I have to bring this rook back. This rook is misplaced on h6. It is not doing anything, it's just simply misplaced. Bishop c4. Now he intends to kick my queen or exchange this bishop, which is great. So I bring my rook back. Bishop a6. I don't play bishop b7. Then he will happily exchange and play rook d7, which I don't want. So do not. So again, previously I used to think, okay, now I have an opportunity to exchange the bishops, but here this bishop is important to control the d7 square. If I exchange, he will happily exchange and play rook d7, and now my position is in trouble. Now I am in big trouble. He will triple on the d file. He has full control on the d file, and then he has actually good play. So it all depends on this exchange. So I don't, you should not exchange here. Queen c7, just hold. uh, bishop c bishop c4 is a bad move. He should play bishop b5. He should exchange this bishop now. This bishop is critical to entering the position with d7, but he played bishop c4. It's tempting to play bishop c4 here because this is a very good diagonal, but this diagonal is currently blocked and I don't see how you will open it. There is no way to open it. So the better plan here is to just exchange this key piece. But he didn't do that. He played bishop c4, h6. I solved my back rank problem. You notice that black is actually not doing anything. Okay, black has no clear attacking plan here. White is trying to push. White is trying to exchange the bishop. White is trying to enter the d7 square. White is control of the d file. White is trying to seize the initiative, but he's unable to seize the initiative, and he's slightly getting frustrated. He's making moves faster. I saw the time control. He was making moves fast, and he's trying to do anything to get the initiative, but there is none. There is no initiative. So in this position, in this type of positions, you just have to remain calm and hold. Just hold. Your opponent will themselves make a mistake, which he did. Queen h5 is a not a good move. He's pressuring my rook, but my rook is defended by my bishop. So I don't see how this helps. b5, very good move. Now this b5 forever shuts off his prospects on the on this diagonal. So black is saying, if you go back, I'm going to play c4. And if you play b3, I will not do anything. I will simply move the bishop back. Or maybe I will play a6. Right? So I'm telling white, this diagonal is, I'm going to close it now. So you better decide a new square for your bishop right now. Otherwise, I'm going to close it if you go back to the diagonal. So bishop e2. Now rook f8. This is a very good move. So rook f8 with two ideas. First idea is I don't want this rook to be attacked by the queen because my bishop should be free. Now the bishop has a liability to defend the rook. So now the bishop, after this the bishop is free. And second, I want to bring the bishop on e8 and kick the queen and misplace it. The queen I feel is misplaced on h5. It has nothing to do on this here. Yeah, so which we will see. He goes back with the rook because he thought I was threatening bishop d5 to trap the rook, and it will become difficult to bring the rook back into the game, which was also another plan. But I thought he could give back the exchange and just eliminate this bishop and then break with the pawns and do something. But even if you give the exchange, I would say an exchange and a pawn, black is still better. So he thought I'll play bishop d5, so he and then bishop e8. Now you see this bad bishop, the so-called bad bishop, which is obstructed by its pawns. It's actually playing. My queen is not playing. My rooks are not playing. My bishop is playing. Yeah. So queen h4 and g5, a series of accurate moves one after another. Now this queen is misplaced. Where is this queen going? My h6 is defended by my rook, and all the other squares are covered. If you go to h3, then where are you going after h3? If you play g4, I could also play f4 in some lines, and e takes f4 is queen takes f4. So if g4, I could push by f4 also. So his queen goes all the way back to queen h2 and king g7. And now I'm saying your queen is misplaced. I'm not sure what your bishop is doing on e2. Your rooks are good, but they don't have any entry. Now show me what are you going to do? You don't have the f3 break. I mean, you have the f3 break now that g3 is defended, but I will not take it. I will force you to take it so that I can open the f file. Computer evaluation is black is slightly better, +1 or +0.8. There is nothing going on here, but you see white's pieces are severely restricted. Except d6, there is no entry. Now he plays bishop h5. Of course, I will not exchange. I will go back because my bishop has an important role to cover the d7 square. His bishop is without a job. His bishop has nothing to do. He can never play f3. If he plays f3, I will not exchange. I will not exchange and allow him to exchange. I will keep the position cramped. Yeah, so I did not exchange. and he played c4. I played c4. Now that he played f3, now e3 is weak, so I played c4 to go queen b6 and target the e3 weakness. Now, because he has less space and he is without a plan, he has to do something. And when he does something, he will make. Often your opponent will make a mistake when they don't have a plan, and this f3 is a mistake. So c4. Later, I can play a5 and b4 and break the queen side later. Not now. My main intention is to play queen b6. And then he took, expecting bishop takes d5 and bishop f3, but that's not happening, man. So we can simply block the whole thing. Now my bishop again is bad. All my pawns are on light squares, and it looks bad, but it's actually very good. Now I have the open f file. I have a e3 weakness to target, and it's not clear what is this queen doing on h2, and what are these rooks doing here. How will they enter the game? He can offer an exchange of queens, which I could deny by queen f6, or I could even accept and play rook f2. Yeah, so there are multiple possibilities. Bishop g4 again does nothing, absolutely nothing. Bishop g4 does nothing, but there is no place for that bishop to go. Queen b6, and now he had to play rook e2. He played rook e1, which is a decisive blunder, and this loses on the spot with queen takes e3. If rook takes e3, rook e1 mate, and this is check. His king has to move. If he blocks with the rook, it gets taken, and this is complete suicide. So he had to play rook. He had to play this rook e2. But still white is better. Now I can open the queen side slowly and then now I can play bishop d5. So this game is a good example of when your light squared bishop in the London system is actually not bad. So let's go all the way back. So if you play this variation, don't think that this c8 bishop is a bad bishop. No, it's not a bad bishop. Don't think white has solved his problem, that his bishop is out of the pawn chain, your bishop is inside the pawn chain, how will you do things? No, you don't even think about that. It is temporarily blocked, but it will come in the game. So bishop d3, bishop d6, we give our so-called good bishop, that's okay. And then castle c5, queen c7, very important. Before you don't play knight c6, play queen c7. Knight c6 is playable, but better to play queen c7, knight f3, knight d7. We control the e5 square. We have 3 pieces, he has 2 pieces. Then that's a bad move. Generally c4 is to be played. Then our plan is simple: b6, castles, bishop b7. Now this bishop, pawn and knight controls the e4 square. That is the job of this bishop in this variation. Generally, it could have other jobs also depending on which moves your opponent plays. But generally in this structure, this bishop is controlling e4. And if white has to be precise. If they are not precise, you will simply land a knight on e4. Queen c2, knight e4. You let him take. Let there be a pawn on e4. That's actually a strength. That is actually a strength. Now, it might also be a good idea to first exchange this bishop and then play knight e4, because he could ignore you and he could play like this. Now there's f3 break is there. Now knight d2, let's say, and f5. Now he can break with f3 because there is no weakness on g3, right? So it might be even better to, in this queen c2 is a bad move. It might be even better to first take this and create the weakness on g3 and then play knight e4. So that after this happens, if he plays knight g4, yeah, now e6 could be a problem. Yeah, we play knight f6. No, but then he takes. No, he can't take. His queen is in front of the bishop. Yeah, so if he plays knight g5, then we play knight f6. But if he plays knight d2, then we play f5. Now here there is no f6 f3 break because the g3 is falling and then rook is coming and it will become a big mess. So I did not do that. I directly played knight e4. That's wrong. I should first exchange this bishop and then play knight e4. Yeah, so let's see the game continuation once more. Knight e4, knight takes c4. Well, if I were white, I will never take. I will never take and allow a pawn on e4. Knight takes e4. He allowed this pawn. Now I take this and play f5. And play f5, and I have the superior knight. I have not the superior bishop, but it's actually doing something. His bishop is not doing anything just yet. And if even if it comes to this diagonal, it is severely restricted because I control the d5 square. Black controls there is no d5. He can never play d5 without c4. And once he plays c4, then I take and break up the center and then push my pawns. So there are multiple plans there. Knight c4 and then knight g4. Good move. Queen f7 is the threat. Queen e2. And then I just got panicked by this diagonal and I didn't play it. I play like this and then I play like this. That was a mistake. Of course, you will not play a cent% accurate game. This was around 80 to 82% accuracy. Queen f7 would have been the right plan. But after this, I could not. After this, I could not calculate what happens after rook h6 and queen d7. I could not see a continuation after king f1 and the king is just running away in the queen side, and my pieces looks uncoordinated. This bishop, this rook, these are all unprotected. I have back rank weakness. So I took a practical decision. Let me not venture into this. Let me keep it little safe. Let me play rook h6, protect the e6 pawn, and then maybe do something. And maybe he will play knight e5 and give me the pawn, which he did. And I just came back and then I consolidated, and then once b5 was played, there was no looking back. Now his pieces are misplaced. Queen h5, queen is misplaced. This bishop is misplaced. Rook f6, rook goes back. Bishop kicks the queen. Queen goes to h5. You kick the queen again. Don't be afraid of pushing pawns. He can't do anything here. There is no pawn break. There is no pawn break. There is no pieces on the king side. There are no knights. The rook doesn't have an entry. So there is nothing wrong in pushing g5 and gaining space and restricting the enemy queen. And then king g7. Simple chess. Bishop h5, bishop c6. Very important. Don't exchange this bishop. If you exchange, he can bring the other rook to h1 in some variation and do something here. So don't exchange. His bishop is jobless. Bishop c6, f3. Yeah, finally he cracks. Fine, this is what I was waiting for. I won't take. I will not take. I could play e5 also. C4, no. Queen b6 targeting e3, and finally he cracks. He just gets frustrated. A doubled pawns looks really bad, but it's actually useful. It is actually useful. It controls very important squares. I can land a rook on d3 somehow. That would be a disaster. Yeah, and then now e3 is weak. Bishop g4 doesn't do anything. Queen b6, and now finally the decisive blunder is rook e1 and queen e3. So your bad bishop in London system actually has a job to do, to control e4 and in some lines control d7. And this bishop is actually useful than this bishop.